Hey, everybody, welcome to the 10th episode of Taps and Patience, where occasionally I forget to do the podcast, and Harrison has to remind me. Speaking of Harrison, I am here with my co-host, Harrison of Precision Ingenuity, and I am AJ of Design the Everything.
How we doing this evening?
Forgetful, apparently.
No worries, that happens. So it sounds like you're pretty preoccupied today. So you want to tell me what's going on with that?
Yeah, so basically, over the last week, I've just had to I've just slowly been wrinkling out all of the problems in the carabiner process.
Mm-hmm.
And, I went through and I sorted through all of my carabiners, and I had to pull out a bunch of ones that were bad from my old fixture, and I had to toss a painful amount of them. It was probably about a third of the ones that I had made so far.
Oh, really?
Which was probably about 30 or 40 carabiners.
Oh, okay.
But I got the ones that were like bad pulled out, and that left me with about 100 or so, or 70, 80 or so carabiners that they had good bones, but they had really big burrs / onion skins on the back side of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent all day today sandblasting those off.
Oh,
And they
man,
come off. It takes a lot of sandblasting. So, and it's like 2 minutes each one. Maybe 3 minutes, but 3 minutes times 80 carabiners or whatever, and suddenly
several
things start
hours.
to take a lot longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I probably got about half of them done, and I can probably do the other half. The good news is, and I cannot explain why, but I redid my fixture last week, and even using the same tool, I am not having those onion skin issues. So I investigated other tools as well, and I found some options that work better, but I was getting really bad tool life, and it was much slower. Well, it was a little bit slower, maybe 20% slower once I played with optimizing it. But for whatever reason, and I assume it's because it's more rigid, with my new fixture, I don't get those onion skins anymore.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
So that now instead of sandblasting each one for 2 or 3 minutes, I literally just put them all in it was a broken Nalgene water bottle I had. I broke the top off of it at some point, and I just cut the whole top off, so it was a cup basically. And I drilled a couple holes in there for sand to escape. And now I just kind of, for the new ones, I can basically just stick my sandblaster in there, pull the trigger, they swirl and dance around, and I do that for a minute with 10 or 20 of them in there, and it deburrs all of them. So
yeah, it's funny because what you just described making, I actually have one of those that we bought with our Cerakote kit. That's
where I got the idea.
Yeah, designed to do exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it works really well for small parts.
It does. It's surprisingly even sandblasting finish on parts when you use that.
I need to get a lid on mine because my carabiners like to kind of jump out on me.
Yeah. That is the one nice thing about ours is it has a lid that snaps on, and it has a rubber gasket that you can stick the nozzle of your sandblaster through and kind of keeps all your small parts. And I've done some pretty small parts in there, so it's pretty nice to have.
I mean, that's seriously basically been my last week. There's probably something that I'm not thinking about, but in terms of Design the Everything stuff, I have just been making that process better, and I finally am at a point now where I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah. So, so you got over 100 done because you threw some away. So how many good ones do you have currently? Do you know?
I haven't actually counted once. With the ones that I ran today, because I ran quite a few pallets today, I think I probably have about 150 or so that are done.
Okay.
Or excuse me, that are machined and then in some form of finishing.
So how are you liking the mass production side of things? Are you kind of missing the prototyping stuff, or do you find enjoyment in doing higher volumes?
I don't mind the sandblasting, for hours on end
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
actually bother me that much.
hmm
Like I just sit there and I watch videos and I sandblast, and like the actions themselves don't bother me. What bothers me is I'm in my head going, "Oh no, I need to design the next thing. I need to prototype the next thing. I have so much to do. Why am I standing here sandblasting?" Um, and that's the worst part. Everything else is fine. Like I don't mind the work. I just know I have other stuff I need to be doing.
yeah, yeah. That's fair. That's totally fair. So yeah, when you start producing stuff, it can be really nice to get into a rhythm and like kind of feel in it. For me, on the job shop side of things, when you get into a rhythm, it feels good because I know I'm making money in that rhythm.
Yes.
For you, you've already been paid, so maybe it's a little bit different on that side of things. But for me, mass producing parts is always nice um, because of that. But on the flip side, it can suck because it's exactly what you're saying, trying to come up with the next product. For me, it's like when I'm working on mass producing something, I'm not finding the next customer who needs work. I'm not actively searching for it because I'm doing something else. And so it might be great in the short term, but as soon as that work dries up, I'm back to my computer and phone and emails trying to find more work that I can do. So,
Well, I mean, part of the problem is we are both uh, manpower manpower challenged. We are both of our bottlenecks is man hours, and you have a business partner which helps you. I work with a series of freelancers which helps me, but
yeah. Yeah. And on that side of things, we have done in the last week we did over $500 worth of sales on our online stores. So my partner has been doing a lot of hard work on our website and on our Etsy page, and it's starting to fill out like crazy.
mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that it starts to pick up in sales. Um, and it's definitely looking that way currently. And we have a lot of really cool ideas and things that we're coming up with to kind of fill out our page and get more stuff going. So if I can keep that pace going, and if we can get our product side to become to a point where it sustains us um, weekly or monthly, where we're not as dependent upon the job shop stuff, and we have at least a base level of known income. That's what I've been looking for on the job shop side of things, but it's been harder. That being said, let's see. Last week we did it on Wednesday, didn't we?
The
Um,
podcast, yes,
yeah. Did I talk about the aluminum case?
yes, you
Um,
did
yeah. Okay.
with the cool ball mill knurling on the back. Yeah,
Yeah. Yes. So they were extremely happy with that, and they are ordering a bunch of tumblers that they want to have laser engraved for their company. Yeah. And then they've also placed an order for some prototypes of some 3D printed prototypes of some products that they want to release and have promised to buy a certain amount of them if the prototypes work as well as that we're thinking they will. And they have another item that they wanted me to look at making, and I'm making that one as well. So I got like 3 or 4 different POs from them here recently, and I'm hoping that it continues. And they also gave me a bunch of stuff that they would like me to eventually do, but I don't have the equipment for it just yet.
okay. What
So
would you need?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. We kind of briefly talked about this. I think on Instagram or something. Do you remember talking about the was it you or was it someone? I might have been talking to someone else about it though. I can't remember. Um, they have these enclosure doors for electrical cabinets, and they're hand drilling all of the holes on them to put their buttons and switches and things. And so they want to see if I can come up with a way. And their panels can be pretty big. They can be up to 4 foot by 8 foot for the big stuff. But their average panel size is probably in the 3 foot by 2 foot range, somewhere in there. And they would like to have them laser cut out and then laser engraved what the buttons are. Um, And so I'd like to figure out a way I can do that because they go through a ton of panels. And if I could automate that process for them and do the front side and the back plane on the back side of it as well, that would be sustainable, repeating work um, that I would very much like to get. So I got to figure that out. And I don't know if a router or some type of plasma. I mean, a fiber laser would be ideal, but the amount of money, space, and power that those things require, there's no way I can touch one of those for a while. So kind of a lower tech solution I would love to find.
What if you did this? So you can buy a fiber laser that uses the same laser sources as all the common ones now, the OMTechs, the JSTs or whatever they are. The generic Chinese laser. You can get a gantry style version of those, and I believe about the same size as my laser. So something like 3 feet by 2 feet or so, about the right size for those panels. And you could use that laser to engrave the engraving, but then also you could make a crosshair of where you need to drill. And then you just go in with a hand drill and a step bit to place the actual hole.
That would work for some stuff, but some stuff has a square hole.
You just get a square drill bit.
Yeah, square drill bit. I think what they do is they drill it out with a square hole, and then they take like a jigsaw and trace and cut it out. But I'm looking for a cleaner solution if I can get away with it. I figured a router table could do the trick. If I could find a way to vacuum it down, vacuum work hold it. Yeah, and then what I thought about was the way these panels are, I would have to actually load them in upside down because that's the smooth side that I could vacuum down. And then I would machine them from the back side out and then load them into a different machine to do the fiber engraving side of it. Which my machine, I can actually remove the head off of it and make a portable unit for it. I can do that.
Can you stick it on a router?
I could, if I messed with the cabling correctly. And they actually sell those machines on gantries. So if I had something that worked well, I would probably buy another fiber laser machine that would be much lower power just for the dark engraving because you don't need. Mine's an 80 watt. I could get by with a 20 or 30 watt if I was just using it to do the black mark, and those are a couple $1,000, $2,000-$3,000 or something like that. And I could add that to a router table and probably get a pretty good combination of those two to make it work. So
there's got to be some company that already has a packaged solution.
I'm sure there is, and I'm starting to get more and more Instagram comments from people that watch or listen to our podcast that chime in with. So I'll bring up like a problem I'm having, and then like I'll get a message like in a week or two, it'll be like, hey, have you thought about this? And it's like, no, but I'm glad I'm doing a podcast, so you would suggest it.
That is one of the advantages of being a public machinist, a public.
Yeah.
And the downside. I was derailing it, but the downside of this is when we get more followers, we will have 12 different people that have the same idea. Yeah, and they will all tell us.
That is true.
This is a problem I have on Instagram. And it's like they're trying to be nice, but it's like,
oh, yeah.
Yes, I've heard the same solution 13 times, but you're being nice, so I appreciate you. But
no, yeah, and that is definitely a challenge that will be you need almost like a website for every podcast episode, like put your suggestions here, and it's like a public chat that, like per episode that's like, if you read through the chat, and if someone else has already made the suggestion, then you're good.
Yeah, I mean it's not a problem. It's really only,
but it'd be really, I would actually,
I don't know.
it would actually be interesting if you could tie episode. I mean, I guess that's kind of what the comment section is on this kind of stuff, but
Yeah,
um,
which podcasts don't have.
exactly. So if podcasts had a way to comment on them, then that could be pretty useful.
Yeah, it's called uploading
Interesting.
them to YouTube.
Yeah,
Or we could have a Discord.
yeah, that's true. That might have to happen at some point if we get to if we have the problem of actually having a lot of
Yeah.
followers, which isn't a problem. So
Okay, we're off topic. Let's get back to
yeah, we're off
Christina
topic.
here.
So yeah, a big router table is kind of what I'm leaning towards, and they sell them in sub $50,000
Oh, yeah.
prices all day long, and that I could probably make work pretty easily. The key would be, would I have enough vacuum power to actually hold them down? And then could I get the right tooling? In my ideal world, I would do vacuum work holding and then use something kind of like a high feed end mill that kind of plays to the strengths of a router, where I'm taking a light, fast cut and profiling it out and not actually eating all the material out, but just cutting through and following the profile of the different hole sizes. That way I'm not constantly changing tools. I can cut out any of the different shapes. And I'm not dealing with any crazy side loads that you can that routers aren't the best at doing unless they're really built for it.
Yeah, and I think these are all solved problems. Like this isn't anything new or unusual.
No,
And a panel that size, vacuum work holding is great because you have like
a
13
lot.
tons of work holding.
Yeah. The only problem
I don't
is
see
with
any issues.
the only problem with those is they don't hold. Like, I'm thinking of the wood side router panels. I have a cousin who has a cabinet business, or his dad has a cabinet business, and they just got their first router. They're about to get their second, and they have a spoiler board that they vacuum work hold through, and it's a high flow, low pressure vacuum work holding, and so it holds down with a lot of force, but it's only like 4 or 5 psi of negative of vacuum, 4 to 5 psi of vacuum pressure.
Yeah, but how much
So
do you need? 5 pounds per square inch times 48 times 96 is like a
yeah,
big
but for the
number.
smaller panels, so if you had what was that, 36 by 24. Oh, I have a whiny cat. Okay, that's still a lot of force. That'd probably be
Yeah,
fine. That'd
yeah.
probably be
Because
fine.
a full perfect vacuum is still only 14 psi.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd probably be fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd have
you
to look
just
in that, because if I can justify the throughput and nail down pricing for that, I'm gonna have to do some work on this. I'm gonna have to run some numbers.
yeah.
I really want to do that because I've been wanting a router table, just trying to find a way to justify it,
Mm-hmm.
and this might be a way
Same.
that I could eventually justify it if I can use it to have steady income on that side of things. I
Yeah.
also want to be able to tap on it. So
Oh, okay.
you know,
That's a whole nother
yeah,
level up.
yeah.
You just turned a $30,000 router table into a $60,000 one.
Yeah, so that's the stuff. And see, I've thought about doing like a an Avid CNC router table, where I can put my own spindle on it and then try to make it as rigid as I can. Um,
What do you have against thread milling?
Nothing. I don't have anything against
Because
thread
then you
milling.
can still thread holes, and you don't need a Torbox spindle on the end of a router.
That's true. Hmm. I guess I just need to see what those. I have a thread mill, and it didn't really spin at those super high RPMs. So I guess I just need to find thread mills that can handle the higher RPMs of those things.
I think they can. I thread mill at 10K RPMs because that's all the RPMs I have. Like
Yeah, but stainless doesn't like those higher RPMs.
that's true. I've not done stainless.
So like aluminum, you can throw all the RPMs you want at it, and it
Yeah.
doesn't care. Stainless cares a lot. I
Yes.
have had many stainless steel parts that you start throwing RPMs at it, and they turn into well, they just melt your tooling
Yeah.
basically. So
Yeah, that was the problem I was having with the slitting saws on the pry bars, is because I was doing stainless, and the slitting saw is 2-inch diameter, and so then I'm needing to run a fairly slow RPM, and the Tormach and High Belt just doesn't like that slow of speed.
hmm yeah, that's that's the problem with high belt and the Tormach. And I've have you used low belt yet?
No, never. I refuse on principle.
It's it's got a lot of power in low
Oh,
belt.
sure.
It really does. I mean, that's where I did that video of the 5/8 by 11 tap on Instagram. Yeah, it's that's something that even I was talking to a different machine shop. They have a 30 horse direct drive, and they say they start struggling when they get that high. Granted, I think they were doing it in stainless versus me doing it in aluminum, but still pretty impressive for that little Tormach. So let's see here. What else do I got? Should be getting a whole bunch of material coming in on Thursday.
For tape
So
measures?
tape measures is included in there.
Woohoo.
So
Where do you get your material where you're having to order it in?
I get it from anywhere and everywhere. So
Okay.
um, there's a hey there, Floofy. They got a cat. Floofy is his name, and he's a black cat that is just needing all of the attention right now. I don't know what he's. Anyways, um, so I get material from McMaster, Xometry, Online Metals. There's a local company called Boyd. There's a different company that I've just ordered material from, and that's where your material is coming in. They're from a company called Howard.
Okay.
They're a subsidiary of Ryerson, I
Oh,
believe, or
yeah.
they're they're a Ryerson based company or something. And their prices have been the cheapest so far in aluminum. So
Do
that's
you
what
do you
I'm.
have just like a local Alro?
No, there's one in Tulsa, but shipping is stupid. I don't know why their shipping is so high. But what I can do is sometimes there's the local machine shop. They'll place orders in through Alro. I haven't done it yet, but sometimes I can piggyback off of their shipments and just say, hey, when you bring their next shipment, just throw my one or two pieces on there, and I'll just piggyback and pick it up from them.
Yeah, I
So,
guess I've always been spoiled by living in a fairly industrial area. At my last place, we had a metal supermarkets, which was like 3 minutes away from my house, and I had
mhm.
a really good relationship with them. And then now I have an Alro that's about 10 or 15 minutes, so I can just drive my new shop truck over there and
Mhm.
throw it in the back. Because when
Yeah,
I
I
was
don't.
working on tape measures, I got a bar. Hey, I'm going to come pick up a bar, and they had it ready in like 20 minutes, and
Yeah,
faster than
my
ordering a
close.
pizza.
My closest place is um, about 45 minutes, and they only do stainless and plastic, and they only do it in the large sheets, like for like a
Interesting.
giant laser cutters. Like
Yeah.
they have some stuff that's smaller, but it's not nearly as common. Um, and the stuff that I have gotten from them that was the bar stuff for stainless was so twisted. I fought it so much. It was like bowed in the middle, like
Yeah.
like the whole piece. It was just
Like
it
a
was
hardware
bad.
store 2x4.
Yeah, pretty much exactly. So I just was. I don't. I like working with them, and I send a lot of stuff for them to quote, but I don't always end up going with them due to pricing or quality of material. So
There's another online place, and I'm blanking on their name. It's like Midwest Metals or something like that, and they have slow lead times but pretty cheap material.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of what you. The slower the lead time, the better the price is typically how it goes. Um, but I always love playing the what if game in material and figuring out, how much can I order at one time to get my price down, and how does it affect this and that. Um, which I was doing that a little bit today because we were trying to figure out some new products to bring to market. Um, and our stainless steel little poker coin things or challenge coins have been doing really well. They're probably one of our top sellers. And so we're thinking about doing some stainless steel dealer coins, like so that you stick in front of the dealer. It says, as it kind of rotates around,
Oh
and then
yeah,
you have big blind, small blind, and all in. So we've thought about doing some of those, and those are going to be a lot bigger. It'll be like 2 3/8 inch diameter, which is going to be almost the max diameter our machine can handle.
and
Um,
that's if you get that as a bar, that's a chunky piece of steel.
yeah, well, the reason we thought about it was because I did some 2.5 inch um, stuff for a local company, and we ended up having to scrap one of the bars because it was bent and just didn't like whenever I extended it out, it actually had so much of a bow in the middle that once it was extended out, it was just all over the
That's
place.
terrifying.
Yeah, it was really annoying. It was out by 30 or 40 thou, something like that. And so it doesn't sound like much, but when you start spooling up your lathe and you start seeing that thing whip around, you're like, nope, that's way too big. Nope.
I'll pass.
Hard pass. So, but I could chop that bar and stick it out, a couple inches at a time and chop it into a
Yeah.
bunch of tiny little pieces, and it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
So, because I was trying to think, I was like, man, what are we going to do with that? And I was like, dealer coins. Let's try that. So we'll see. We may or may not do that. I don't. We changed out our lathe from a 3-jaw style to a Royal Collet system
Oh, okay.
a little bit ago. And when we did that job originally, we had the 3-jaw on there, and I can switch it back and forth. It just takes a lot of time. But eventually, we would like to get the 2.5 inch collet chuck so that we can do those bars. So, but yeah, it's fun. That collet system. I don't know if I've talked about that yet, but when we switched it over, it is so much nicer than the 3 jaws. Oh, like it literally like 10 to 15 minutes to change out the jaws doesn't, or 5 minutes. I guess it's not 10 to 15, but like 5 minutes to change it out doesn't sound like a lot. But if you're constantly changing out between different size material, like you're going, oh, I got to run like 4 parts. And so I got to change out my jaws, go from the hard jaws to the soft jaws, run those parts. And then you got to go back to the hard jaws. And then you got to dial it in. Like you'll put them all in and you'll stick your part in there. Oh no, that's too loose. They need to go a click or 2 in. So you move them in. I don't know. Do you know how the 3-jaw works on a CNC lathe?
I do
Oh, okay. Well, this is really cool. So on a manual lathe, you'll have like a key that you have to rotate, and it'll move all 3 jaws in and out at the same time. On a CNC lathe, almost all of them have a hydraulic chuck.
Yeah.
There are still some sold with a manual. But that hydraulic chuck only has about a 1/16 to an 1/8 inch of travel.
Okay.
And so instead, you have like a sub piece that moves in and out those 16 inches, and then your jaws will have 2 jaws your jaws will have 2 bolts, and then they'll have a bunch of teeth, and then you can just index them in and out independently. All 3 move independently, and then you have to tighten them down.
Mm.
The nice thing about that is that it's real easy to go from aluminum jaws to steel jaws to custom jaws, you name it. The downside is that you have to manually tighten 6 bolts, and you have to make sure that they're all in alignment. Because if
Yeah.
you're one tick off one way or the other, then your part's going to be wobbling in the 3-jaw
Yes.
because it's not lined up. So, in that sense, it doesn't take too long if you get it down, but it's still frustrating enough that the collet system is far superior. I mean, I can change out a collet in under a minute. Like, we were working on a part, and that's the other thing. The 3-jaw don't have a backstop for, like, if you're sticking in something and you want it to have a hard stop on the backside. The collet system has that. And so, like, I was literally pulling the jaws out, adjusting that backstop, and putting it back in faster than I could change the jaws. So I would stick the part in, see how far it was sticking out. Okay, I need to do more. Pull the whole collet system out, pull the back plane out, adjust it, stick it back in there, stick the collet system back in there before I could change out the other jaws, like
Yes.
take them off, let alone put the next set of jaws back on. It was just so much faster.
Yeah.
So I hope this is making sense and I'm not talking
gibberish.
gibberish.
It does. Though the video, which you can see on Spotify, if you're watching on Spotify, does help. Or if you're listening in a podcast player that's not Spotify, there's a video on Spotify.
Yeah. So
it doesn't make a difference to us where you listen, but
I apologize if I start talking too fast because I do that from time to time. So.
I thought of something I missed earlier in other stuff I've done this week. This week was basically the week of filters.
Oh.
And I got a big air cleaning filter hung up and installed Saturday with my dad. We put a outlet up in the ceiling that is on the same circuit as the lights, so that I was hoping that it would just turn on whenever I turned on the lights, but you actually have to go and press the turn on button. But it does turn off when you turn off the lights. So I'm not going to accidentally leave it on. But that just cleans all of the air in the shop. And there is a noticeable difference, both from the mist from the mill, and even then, even if I'm just sweeping or something, I would kick up dust and it would just kind of stay in the air for an hour or two. And now that all just gets sucked away. And
okay, so when you say air filter, you're meaning an actual, breathing air filter, not for your compressed air.
Not for my compressed air, correct.
Okay,
it's like something a woodworker would hang above their table saw to filter
like a dust extractor type deal for a clean air. Yeah, because do you have a lot of humidity where you're at, and do you get a lot of water in your lines?
Yeah, my lines have been pretty safe. I definitely get some condensation, but I have I need an air dryer. It's on my list. But right now I have just a 3-stage filter dryer thingy. It's not a dryer. It's like a water separator.
Yeah. So I have 4 of those, and I still get bursts of water to my nozzle. And our sandblast cabinet, we have our air comes in and it makes a downturn, and then there's the nozzle where you plug into it. That thing will fill up 5 to 6 inches high of water in the pipe after running it for a day or two. That's just how much water we get. And I drain out probably 12 to 16 ounces of water a week out of the base of the tank.
That's interesting, because that's about the same for me, maybe even more. But I don't actually have issues with water in my pipes.
Oh, I get water all up in my pipes, and I have 4 air to water separators, and they fill up, and then I drain those. So
I wonder why. Do you have copper pipes?
We have not cast iron, but the
just the metal pipes, the black,
just
black
metal pipes. Okay. My dad set it up long before we moved into there, and he just used black iron or whatever they call it, those pipes. And I think they make it infinitely worse because they are cold and they just pull the water out of the hot compressed air, and they make it much worse because it can get down the line, it cools way off, and then it just condenses water. And all of my ports are lower than the main feed pipe, so they if you're not using them, they just fill up with water over time.
Do they have drains? Because I have
No,
a valve I can open at the bottom of all my drops. So like
no.
before I use the air compressor, or excuse me, before I use my sandblaster, for example, every time I just open that valve for a second, and it'll make a little poof of moisture, but it's not like draining the bottom of the compressor.
No, we do not have those. I probably need to go through and put T's on all of those joints, and then put a little bit of pipe below it to act
Yeah,
like a catch. But
yeah. I I still haven't finished fully installing my system. Technically, I still have a little
mm-hmm.
bit of work to do because it's supposed to be a loop, and instead of a loop, I just have a line, and I just haven't connected from the mill over to the compressor, which is literally like the last 20 feet. I've done the other 150 feet, but I just never got around. It was like, okay, it's functional. I'm going to cap it off temporarily, and it's been temporarily capped off for a year. But
Is it all the same size pipe, or do you have your
yes,
main line is thicker than the rest?
yes, all of mine is the same diameter. I use the Rapid Air PEX aluminum PEX pipes, which I'm actually very happy with. When I first installed it and I first pressurized it, I had one blowout, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh no, is this going to be how it is for the rest of the time?" But since then, zero issues, and I've had no leaking at any of the Rapid Air joints. I've only had
That's
leaking
awesome.
at the MPT ones that I did. But all of mine, I have that valve on the bottom of the drop, and then I
Mm-hmm.
have a T coming out that gives me two airports. So
Yeah,
at all of my drops, I have plenty of adaptability.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, the air situation is something that I desperately want to address for the sandblasting cabinet, Cerakote, and our new lathe, which the thankfully it's the like furthest thing down the line, so it gets the least amount of water that I've noticed. Thankfully, but the tech when we installed it, he said we need to make sure we have clean air because it does use the air for the tool changer, and it can rust out from the inside out if you get too much water behind it.
Yeah. What kind of compressor are you running?
Like at the DeWalt 60-gallon 3 horsepower piston.
Okay. Yeah, I've got Ingersoll Rand 5 horsepower piston, 80 gallon.
Yeah.
So, but same idea. It's not like you're running a different kind of compressor that'd be more prone to condensation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just it can get really humid around here, and at the beginning it was worse. It's better now that I'm draining it every week, but when we first started, um, I don't think my dad had ever drained it or installed a drain plug in it, and
uh,
I drained a couple gallons out of it of water
yep.
the first time. Um, it was bad, but now I got a drain down there that I just flip a lever and it.
I need one of those because I have like the little tiny twisty one, and
No,
it's a pain.
I I drained so much water out of mine that I put a hose on it. That way I can drain it into a bucket. Um, and so um, my Haas is really nice because it's got an air to water separator, but it's got a solenoid, and every about 15 minutes on the bottom, it'll just turn it on for a second, spurt a little air out there to keep that bowl empty. That's the other thing that I think is helping me out. So,
The Let's see, my Tormach has the one where it drains when you disconnect pressure, when you disconnect pressure.
mhm. Yeah,
Which,
mine has that
granted,
too.
right now I'm not doing very often because I run my mill at least 2 hours after I leave the shop most nights.
Yeah,
Though, to be fair, my program doesn't have any tool changes right now, so there's no reason I couldn't turn it off. I suppose.
yeah,
But out of habit, I leave it on.
yeah. So that's good. Yeah, no, I want to get one of those um I think it was Harbor Freight has like the refrigerator deals to pull the condensation out of your airlines for a couple $100. I do want to get one of those at some point
Yeah, that's
because I
on my
think that'll
list.
that'll help a lot. I think in the long term.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and it'll if it saves you one repair on one machine, it's paid for itself probably three times
oh,
over.
in a heartbeat, or even like Cerakote jobs. Like if we get water streaks in Cerakote jobs, which thankfully hasn't really happened yet, because it's also pretty far down the line. But I could see it happening with how much water comes through our lines. I could see it happening.
Do you have
Um,
another filter on that? Because I had a when I was
yes.
doing Cerakote, I had its own. I guess I still have the setup for my powder coat gun. It has its own, filter separator.
Yep. Yeah. There's three or four between there, so it's got plenty of opportunity to come out. Now, granted, none of them are like super high quality. They're all like Harbor Freight Lowe's separators. I want to get some really nice ones, but they're expensive enough that it's like if you're going to spend that much money, just get the dryer from Harbor Freight because it'll be way better than those. So,
Do you have do you have a regulator at every drop?
not
I've
at
kind of
every
been
drop.
wanting that.
I have a regulator at the paint booth and at the sandblast cabinet and at the main air compressor. So I have three.
Okay. Yeah,
But my
I have one coming right out of the machine. I have one. Well, there's one on the Tormach, and then there's one at my powder coat booth. And I really want one on my sandblaster. And I don't know, just be nice to have. Like I have a drop right by the garage door for filling up tires, and I don't really want to have that hooked up to 120 psi.
so this is what I did. The air regulator that's on the sandblast cabinet, I have a male and female fitting on either side of it, so I can move that one anywhere I need it when I'm not using the sandblast cabinet.
That's cool.
And and so I can just plug it in line anywhere in the shop. So that's my free floating one in case I want to go use it somewhere else. I can take it with me. It's not hardline plumbed. It just has a male and female fitting on the either side, and so I can move it anywhere.
That's
And that
a really good idea.
and that one's kind of my free floating one that I use if I need it for something else. And I actually used it for a while on the Cerakote booth before we got a dedicated one for that one.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I might have to steal that.
Yeah, because I like if you're not using it all the time, I don't think it's worth it to get a dedicated one. But and that's why I was like, well, at least I have this mobile one that I can put it like I can take it out and like go direct air if I want to go if I want to go crazy in the Cerakote booth. That's the main reason we did it was or not Cerakote for the sandblasting because there's sometimes where I don't want it in there any restriction because I want to give it as much air as I can. And there's other times when I'm doing delicate parts that I like want to turn it way down. And so I wanted to have it to be able to go in and out of that with the side benefit being that I can use it anywhere else in the shop.
Yeah, it would. Most of the sandblasting I do is fairly aggressive, which you don't want with Cerakote.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm removing onion skins off of carabiners and that kind of thing, or like with the pry bars, I deliberately get the sandblasting scarring as deep as possible so that it doesn't all tumble out.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't always want to do that, and sometimes it would be nice to dial it back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have the ability to like take it in line and then out of line back and forth, um, it'll make that pretty easy.
Are you using just standard quick connects?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one of the other choices I made when I installed this was all high flow quick connects.
Yeah.
And
That'd be nice.
there when I first had the sandblasting cabinet plumbed up, it had the regular one. But when I moved that over to a high flow, it made a huge difference in sandblasting power.
Yeah, and sandblasting really benefits the most from high flow.
Yep. Though
As
the
it is,
downside,
I was gonna say your air compressor can't keep up.
the downside is my air compressor can't keep up.
Yep.
Um, I basically what I do is it barely keeps up. Um, it balances at about 90 psi where the
Hmm.
air compressor and the sandblaster keep up. But if you do it too long, you overdo the duty cycle on the air compressor, and
Hmm.
which apparently on my air compressor expresses itself as the pressure switch locking up, so where it'll decide to just stay on forever, and then it blows the PRV and makes me jump.
Oh, that's funny.
So I do
That's
like 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off.
yeah. Ours has enough to keep up, but I try not to run it too hard because that also promotes more. It gets so hot that it makes the water come out of the air even more. So, like the really really hot the days that we run that thing hard is when I get the most water. If it just comes on every once in a while, water isn't a big issue. But if it's on and being pushed hard, like the next couple days later, I come back and my water collection is just through the roof.
I would really like one of those Kaiser air towers.
Oh, I want one of those so bad. I was actually browsing. I remember it was Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist the other day, and I saw one that was like 30 years old, and um, you know, they'd just taken it out of the shop and it was still working, and um, I think they wanted like 2 or 3 grand for it. And I'm like, I might could swing that.
They're
No,
not
I can't.
actually all that expensive.
No, but
Like it's not.
it was still pretty high for what it was. But
Yeah,
I wanted the rotary, um,
yeah.
because
Even buying a new one, I don't remember the pricing, but it's not new machine expensive.
no, and it's very nice for quality of life going
Yes.
to a rotary. My old job, they had they had those in a rotary, and I never heard it. Like it was like I'd be walking by it, and you couldn't tell that it was running, more or less. So they were so quiet.
Part of me wants to build a sound enclosure for this one because my
Yeah.
job 2 years ago or 2 jobs ago was building custom, not air compressors, but we called them blowers, positive displacement blowers, which is like an
Hmm.
air compressor, but they max out at 15 psi, but super high
Yeah.
flow, and they are so loud. Some of them like approach jet engine levels of loud. And one of the things we did was custom sound enclosures. And so, like, I've designed a lot of sound enclosures for air compressors. If I
So
could do it, it would just take money.
if you ever come visit our shop and you go look at our air compressor, there is a big piece of 4x8 plywood between the compressor and our side of the shop, and it cuts down on the peak noise.
Yeah.
It's still really loud, but it takes the bite out of the very top end of it.
Huh. And it's just plywood. It's not. There's no
Yeah,
foam
and
or anything on
it's
there.
open. It's literally just against it. So like if if we're on this side of it, then it's just a piece right in the middle that is, and the machine's right behind it, and it's open all around. All it is just slid in beside it, and it takes the that kind of just the bite out of the sound, out of the top end of the sound.
Yeah. Um, that's. I could probably put a piece of plywood somewhere, like in front of mine. And even cover it in foam. At at that job, we had some really good sound absorbing foam. And like
Yeah.
I would love to get a roll of that. It was like 2 inches thick or so, sticky backed, and so we used to make these big sound enclosures, and these things were like, a large room. Well, it's okay, a
Hmm.
small room, a large closet, basically, like um, maybe the size of like a VF VF4, I would say, would be about these compressor units. So it's a room kind of
Mhm.
VF4 sized. And but you would walk in there, shut the door behind you, and it would be like you're in one of those sound isolating rooms. You could like hear your heartbeat and your rhythm,
Mhm.
your breathing. Um, I would love to get some of that foam and just like stick it
Yeah.
around my compressor.
Does it have like a bunch of triangles that are sticking out of it or something? Or
The
pyramids?
the kind we had did not have the triangles. The the triangular foam is for scattering noise, which is what you want in like it's a option if you're in like a recording studio. This foam
Mm.
actually absorbed it and dissipated it.
Oh, okay.
Because if you're in a closed room and you just scatter all of the sound, like the sound is still there. You want
Well,
to.
I always heard that. I was thinking of like the long thin cones that is used to bounce the
Yes.
sound back and forth into the cone, so it didn't go back. I
Okay.
mean,
No,
I
it was
guess
not that foam.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The
but if
ones
you
where they
order,
use the I think they're hyperbaric chambers. I think is what they call them.
that sounds right.
Where it's like you can't hear any, like you can scream or like
Yeah.
blow a bomb up in there and like it's like poof.
Yep.
So
You have to be looking at somebody to talk, otherwise they can't hear you.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, these
So
these enclosures were kind of funky like that. It obviously they weren't scientific grade, but like it was
yeah,
good stuff.
yeah. No, that makes a huge difference. Yeah. Do you have to worry about them overheating in a place like that? Like, do you have to feed them cold air supply?
The Yeah, we had several, depending on the size of the unit, we would size different baffle units to get air in. And depending on the size of the unit, we would um, aid that with some pretty big fans.
Yeah.
The amount of volume of air that most of these units were moving actually was enough to cool it, because you're
Oh,
talking
okay.
2,000 CFM of air that's got to come from somewhere, and it comes
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
through your baffles.
Yeah. So because they weren't traditional air compressors, they were high volume air compressors. They
Yes.
got enough airflow on their own. Now, did those run in like a dual setup, like a lot of these other machine shops are doing, where they have two air compressors, primary and a secondary, and they alternate?
Yes, that was very common. Like one of the installations I designed was for the wastewater treatment center on Guam, and I
Mm-hmm.
believe that was 6 units that all
Okay.
are timed together with a PLC, and they balance for hours and yada yada yada.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandfather used to have a wood shop, and they had a massive air compressor up there. He told me that they had a 2 or 2.5 inch feed hose, and they said you could cut the end off of it and connect like a few feet behind it and still get like 100 psi of air or 80 psi of air out of it, just because of the amount of volume because like everything in the wood shop was air powered, so they had like a
Yes.
100 or 150 horse air compressor that was just like insane. So, and they said it just never shut off. Like when you turned it on, there was no regulator, there was no nothing. It would get up to whatever pressure you set it and just hold it. So,
Yeah, these ones, the outlet on them for the bigger ones, I think was a 14-inch diameter pipe, and some of the smaller ones, I think the minimum was probably about 2 inches.
yeah.
But yeah, when we would test them, I mean, you couldn't walk within, I don't know, 30 feet of the outlet of some of the big ones when they were running, because they would blow you
Oh,
over. It was
that's
they're
cool.
real things. Like they were big pieces of machinery.
Yeah. We've gotten off into the weeds again.
Yeah, I know we have. So filters. I have received filters for my mill on the coolant. I have not installed them yet.
Okay.
I need to go pick up a few fittings to get from like my 5/8 inch tube to the whatever filter connection
Are you
is.
are you planning on putting a gauge on either side so you can see your input and output pressure?
I probably should. My plan is just to watch how much coolant I'm getting and judge it from there. I can always go
Okay.
back and add gauges if I need to.
I recommend it. I
Okay.
mean, you can tell whenever it starts to go down, but there's times when you look at it and you're like, is that normal? Like, I feel like I should be getting more, and it's nice to be able to go back and look and go, oh no, I'm crazy. This is normal. Or go back and go, oh yeah, it has gone down. It's like maybe not enough to quite change it out, but in a couple more days, it'll be time to
Yeah.
change it out.
The other thing that happened, and I have not yet received these, but I have ordered it, is the guy who made my coolant ring introduced a new product that is just like a flat filter that lays down in the bottom of the chip pan. And I convinced him to put him on his website because he was like, "This is what I use," and I was like, "Can I have one?" He was like, "Yeah, put it up on the website." So as soon as he did that, I bought one, and there should be one. It should be in the mail here any minute now. And
That's awesome.
it doesn't replace the inline higher quality filter, or excuse me, higher uh, efficient. No, what's the term? The lower particle size filters that the like the in-house filters that we all use,
Mm-hmm.
but it extends the life of those dramatically, from what I hear.
That makes sense. It's just a pre-filter,
Yeah.
basically. So something did happen that I just remembered. So, we have that fiber laser, and sorry, I was just thinking about different things that had happened, and this popped into my brain. We have that fiber laser, and we do mag engravings, where we do like for like ARs, like we'll engrave people's names, logos,
Mag being
whatever.
magazine for the
Yeah,
uninitiated.
yeah. Um, and I was thinking about it. We do 3D printed products for a different friend, and I was like, can we laser engrave 3D printed parts so that we can put people's names on them and customize them? And lo and behold, we can.
Good to
So,
know.
so we're gonna start offering customizable engravings for people's names on the 3D printed products, and it actually looks really good. Let me see if I don't know if we've posted any photos to our Instagram, and I honestly don't know if we're going to.
Say not that I've
Um,
seen.
but
You should do a series of magazines based on magazines. Oh yeah, that looks
there's
super
our
good.
so that's a logo. That's a 3D printed part, and that's our logo in the center.
Yeah, you couldn't tell that that was engraved 3D printed. Yeah, that looks really good.
Yeah, and here's
Going
a
back and thought,
here's the
nope,
video of it actually.
doing the
That's
engraving.
a, that's a different engraving, but that's a video of it.
Huh. Super
So,
cool. You should
but
make a
yeah,
series of magazines with a theme based on magazines. So you could do like a Time magazine and like a
oh,
People's magazine.
that would be good.
That would be
That would be
so
like
funny.
a Makers magazine or Popular Science, Popular Mechanics,
Yeah.
Times,
Sports
you,
Illustrated.
Sports Illustrated.
I've said all the magazines that I'm aware of, but
Yeah.
a magazine. Someone has to have done this.
Yeah,
It's too good
magazine.
to a magazine. I'm going to Google this because this is great. Googling on a podcast is perfect podcasting.
Yeah, that's for cue the elevator music for all those that are listening.
Man, it's too bad we don't edit these.
No, that's all right. That is
Magazine's really hard
magazine.
to spell.
The magazine.
I cannot find an example of anyone doing this, but it's also very hard to Google. That would do
Yeah.
so well on like Instagram and TikTok and
Oh, it would. I'm gonna have to steal that idea.
yeah.
Magazine.
I
That
Are you or your business partner graphic design
No.
skilled. No, I feel like you
No.
just need like a full time graphic designer.
There are so many things that I need a full time graphic designer for. It hurts.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I would probably hire a graphic designer before I hired another like engineer or machinist type person, just because there's enough stuff that I want to customize that it's such a big hole in our. And the problem is, I've tried hiring people, but it's like super expensive for like one or two designs. It's like, can I just like hire you to be like work for me, and I'll just give you all my ideas, and you just get them done when you get them done. And I pay you an hourly rate, like
Yeah. Well,
because
if you
paying
need to
per
borrow
design.
Scott, you can borrow Scott.
Yeah.
There's also another designer I've worked with is Adam C. And he does a really good job. Scott is really good at like layout and technical design. So like
Hmm.
instruction manuals and pamphlets and
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever else, websites, that kind of thing. But not quite as good at illustration. Adam C is really good at illustration, and I'm sure he's good at the other stuff too. But I've used him for illustration.
So what I need is I need someone who's good at illustration. I can usually manage the technical side of stuff pretty well. Um, but the what I really would like is someone who's kind of 3D artistic, because I'd like to do some height maps to be laser engraved.
That's
I think that would
interesting.
be
I don't
because
even. Hmm.
there's a lot of different designs with that laser that we can get like a 3D effect engraving out of.
Yeah.
Um, and if I could get someone to come up with the designs, I can create a height map once I have a 3D object, and I can create 3D objects. Just all of it has like really sharp corners that if I want them to look nice, I radius them, but it doesn't actually work for artistic things. Like you can't create a human head out of some block and then add radiuses and get a human head, anything that looks like a human head from that. So
Yeah, I don't even know. Gosh, it's such a specific thing that like you're not going to find
game
a graphic designer who's
game
oh
developer, like
yeah.
someone who's used to creating in-game assets. That's what I need is someone who can design computer game graphics or objects in detail, and then make them in the real world. I mean, when you look at stuff like Etsy, like there's a lot of people creating like really cool stuff and 3D printing them because that's a good medium for that. But I need someone who's talented like that, but use it to create a height map for laser engraving.
You almost need two people. You need like one
Yes,
person who draws the design, and then one person who can convert that to
like a
whatever
3D
your
rendering.
laser speaks. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, once I have it as a 3D object, I can make SolidWorks will output a height map. I
Will it
figured that
really?
out. It will.
That's
So
cool.
as long as I have the 3D object and can import it into SolidWorks, I can make my own height map. Um, that's not the hard part. The hard part is getting the 3D model of something that I want to laser engrave.
Yeah. Except you could, because if I understand it right, the height map is all just gradients, right?
Yes.
So you could do that all in 2D without ever going into 3D land.
Yes. You could. Um, and it could look good. I don't know. I mean,
You'd have to have someone who can wrap their head around that.
yes, exactly. Yeah, because you're taking a 3D and smashing it into 2D and using the colors as depth, and it's only two colors. So some and the problem with height maps is they don't really look good like you would think a normal artistic rendering of a grayscale image would. It just looks completely different. Like you can still see all the details, but it'll look like it's blown out and on the high points and then way too dark in the dark points. But it's like that's how it knows how deep to go, and so you can't draw it like you would think a 2D black drawing would look. It's a completely different mindset.
I wonder if you could, to some extent, fake it. Like, let's say you had a black and white 2D drawing, like basically clip art. Like, is there some combination of filters that you could apply to it that like wouldn't make it perfect, but like kind of around the edges some and like make it just a little bit better?
I thought about doing that where you have like an edge and then you like diffuse like it would be basically like radiusing everything is basically what you would be doing at that point. You would take a hard edge, you would create like a dispersed region where you're going from solid
AKA a
color to
blur.
yeah, a blur area around your border. You control the width of that blur, and you're basically creating. It's basically taking a vector image and turning it and radiusing all the edges. So you're not actually creating 3D. It's like 2.5D
Yeah.
kind of. You're not creating like for example, if I was to do like that skeleton head that I did, you can't have the multiple layers of like the outline of the teeth. Like if you tried to do that as a vector and then did that gradient, it wouldn't work right because it's like there's teeth on top of um or no, the teeth aren't a good example. The ripples in the head, that's a good example. Like the skull as it comes around and then it kind of has this flat area that goes out and then it comes back in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of different, like you have different planes of height in there.
Yeah, I
Trying to,
understand what you're saying.
and so
Basically,
you
like if you were to do it with colors, you'd have 3 or 4 different colors stacked on top of each other.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that illustration made it any more clear, but it made sense.
No, it kind of does because you'd have a plane that would represent a height at one color, and then you'd have to have gradients between those planes. So if you had like 4 colors stacked on top of each other, one color represented the top layer and middle layer and bottom layer, and then had gradients between each of them, you could get closer to approximating 3D.
And you could probably change the gradient to change the let's see what it
How
to
how
change
steep
it between
transitions.
like it could be linear or it could be a radius
Yeah,
or it could be
yeah.
an exponential fall
Chamfer.
off.
Yeah,
But there's
yeah.
a bunch of different kinds of blurs, and I bet you could find the blur that did the right thing.
And for some stuff it would work. But another example that I had, this might be easier to understand. A chain. You have a piece that's going flat and the piece that's going vertical. Yeah. And so if I tried to take an image of a chain and add it, then the flats and the verticals would be at the same plane with radiuses going off the end versus having that the horizontal link actually being physically lower than the vertical link, which is going to be in the vertical axis, and therefore it'll be taller than the horizontal. So those are at 2 different heights. And so if I took a vector image and just rounded everything, they would still be flat just with curves versus having one link higher than the other link.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some graphic designer out there that would be good at this. Yeah.
So that's the hard part.
Yeah. At this point, Scott is doing all of my videos, and he was also like, "Hey, can I do some shorts and reels?" And I was like, "Yes, you can." So hopefully, we'll start doing those like this week or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Apart from all of that, I don't think I have anything else that I can think of right now. What about you?
Like I said, this week was filters and figuring out carabiners.
Yeah.
So, I have a non machining thing that I'm very excited about.
What's that?
I got a one wheel. Do you know what a one wheel is?
I do.
I have been wanting a one wheel for years, and like, well, I finally got one. I got a used one. It's a couple years old, but it only had 20 miles on it.
Nice.
I figured like this used to be my hobby and now it's my job. So now I need a new hobby, and I might as well get a hobby that gets me outside and at least some exercise.
I completely understand. So
also, our property is like 100 feet wide and like, I don't know, 2,000 feet long. Mm-hmm. And so if you're like working down at the other end of the property and you're like, oh no, I need to go get my drill, it's like a long walk there and back. This
So
is
you
one of
just
the ways
talked
of
about,
justifying it.
well, I'm gonna just tell you. You said you needed a new hobby that got you out more, and then the first example you can think of is an excuse where you now get to ride back and forth instead of walk back and forth.
Yes, exercise.
just so we're clear.
I know. I didn't say it was a good excuse. I
So,
I've had it for like three. This is my third day where I've had it, and like the first day I rode it for like I only had half an hour or something to get acquainted with it, and I basically just got to the point where I was comfortable like standing and moving forwards. And then the second day I mastered turning, or at least got good enough at turning. And then today I've been doing a little bit more like off in the grass and stuff.
yeah.
But it's actually great. Like I've just been using it to get between the shop and the house, and it saves me a lot of time.
Yeah. If we're talking about non-machining things, then we did just get Starlink out at the shop today.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Was that
I
the
just
only
got
option?
it. No, we had the modern day equivalent to dial-up, CenturyLink, which is horrible, and so Starlink. My dad's the one that actually got it out there, and he's been on the waiting list for over a year, and we're technically in like a beta zone or something like that, or it's not full speed.
Okay.
He's only getting like 40 megabits down, but
Not better than dial up.
yeah, considering before he would be lucky to get 2 megabits,
Yeah.
we were lucky to get 2 or 3 megabits out of the shop. It's like a 10x improvement. Versus, I know some people with Starlink, they're pushing over 200 megabits. So I think he'll get there eventually. But just when we plugged up, within the first 10 minutes of playing around with it, we saw 40 peak was kind of what I saw. Anywhere from 10 to 40. It's kind of the range I saw. So, which is a massive improvement.
So I have a problem with my internet, or a problem with internet companies in general, and like my business. So like I shoot a lot of video, and now that I have an editor with like a real editing computer and not my Microsoft Surface, he requested that I start recording in 4K. The problem is, and he's not, in my shop with me. I can't just hand him the SD card. Problem is, a 4K video is about 100 gigs of video.
Oh
and
my!
we have data limits. Like there's a data cap on our internet. And
well, who do you have?
Comcast.
Oh, we have Cox. So
I mean, they all have data caps right now.
Yeah, it's just so stupid. Like
and
hardline data caps, I feel like are just dumb.
I hate them. I've never actually been charged for going over my data cap, but every month I get an email that's like, "Hey, you're about to go over your data cap. You're at like 90%." And I did go over once, but you get one freebie, and then it's some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah,
my internet's super cheap, but like the data cap is a major pain.
Yeah, what is it, like $40-$50 a month?
I'm paying $40.
Yeah, that's a lot cheaper than mine. Mine's Cox Cox, and it's like 80. It sucks.
How much speed do you have?
That I do have a lot of 250.
Okay. When I first signed up, I believe it was for 50, and then I got an email that was like, "Hey, we're giving you 200 now," which I think means that my rates are about to go up. But in the meantime, it's $40.
I've seen 3 speed increases without a single price increase. So I went from, when I first got the plan, it was 100. And then about a year later, it went up to 150. And then here, just this year, went up to 250. So, and my price has stayed the same. That being said, I don't always see 250. And I think my router, which I got back in like 2016 or 2017, is now my bottleneck. I
Yeah.
haven't upgraded that yet in a while. But
In my last house, we had gig.
oh
It was fiber, and it was like $70 a month or something for gig,
yeah,
and no data caps.
yeah,
And our
yeah,
router was definitely the limit because we would max out at like 375 or so, and that's just the
yeah,
limit of my router.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. There's
those were the days.
I moved to the quote unquote big city. So I moved from the small country side town of like 3,000 people to the big city of 1,500 people or 15,000 people, and got big boy internet. But there's another company called Ozark Go, and they only supply internet to the rural parts of Arkansas now, on the southern side of Arkansas. So Gentry was north of Siloam, and they're putting like 1 gig internet in people's homes for like crazy cheap prices. And what's really annoying is that they like tried to come into Siloam, and Cox is keeping them out because of competition.
I hate ISPs. They're the worst.
And it's like, seriously. So, anyways,
I
we got off topic, but
We did. Hey, things like internet are real parts of running a business. Where like
they
who would
really
think
are.
that my internet data cap would be a bottleneck. I'm gonna have to
True.
like start mailing thumb drives to Scott.
Snail mail.
Yeah,
That's that could be that's a legit problem.
yeah.
Hmm.
I may. So one thing that might help is I store all of my files in Google Drive. So like I have to upload that 100 gigs of files to the drive.
So can you create like a share link then?
Yes, yeah, he has access to them. And I may, if I move to a NAS, a network attached storage, I can basically skip that first link of sharing where I'm uploading them to the drive. Like I can just put them to the NAS without going through the ISP, and Scott can just grab the files he needs.
Yeah, but he'll still have to download them from there, which will take a while.
Because
it'll still be going through the internet.
But he'll only need to grab the proxy files, and proxies are much smaller.
The
So
proxy
sorry,
files?
we're deep into video editing here. When you are editing a high resolution file, your computer will just kind of curl up in a ball and die if you try to edit a file in 4K. And so what you do is you render out a low resolution file, say in 720p or 480, and you edit that, and then there's basically a parametric link back to your high resolution file. So then when you hit render, it's just pulling the high resolution file.
Gotcha. Okay. I haven't done enough video editing to understand that, but that makes a ton of sense now. I never really thought of it.
I will say one really, really nice thing about my DJI camera, this one, the little gimbal cam that I use, this creates proxy files on the fly. So I don't have to render them for Scott, because that would take me days to render those 4Ks down to regular. So
yeah, that is really nice. So I don't think I got anything else.
I don't think we've had anything for the last 45 minutes.
No, we haven't, but we can always find something to talk about. We're both very chatty. So, all right, I guess I'll take us out.
Yeah. Oh, don't forget to do the thing where we ask for the things that we have to ask for: reviews and subscribes and telling their friends.
Yeah. Now that we're internet people, please rate, review, and tell everyone that you meet on the street about us.
I totally didn't ruin this outro.
That's okay. So this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity. Thanks for hanging on as we ramble on for the last 45 minutes about nonsense that has nothing to do with business and machining. But if you've enjoyed your time with us, please tell your friends all of them and and rate and review our podcast. So Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Design the Everything.
Bye.